Hi, I'm Leo, and this is a bonus episode of Books I Have Skimmed, in which I mostly forgot to talk about any books. I am a huge nerd about many things, and in recent years one of these has been Mesopotamian mythology. You see, I was at a wedding a few years ago, and when I was bored, because I'm me, I picked up the nearest book at hand for a flip through, and this being a church, it was a Bible. And I'm loosely familiar with a load of Bible bits and bobs, but I realised I didn't know about any of these places or any of these people that get referenced off in the background. So I looked them up and fell down this rabbit hole of chasing up Babylonian loose ends, and I'm having a whale of a time. You've got to see some of the things I found. There's just this huge well of mythology that hasn't been sanitised by tepid Renaissance artwork, or child-friendly versions that were forced on you in school. For instance, there are the works of Enheduanna. She is the first poet whose name we know in history. She was born in the 23rd century BC somewhere, and she was the high priestess of Inanna. Inanna was the Sumerian goddess of sex and war and beauty and justice and probably more things I've forgotten about. Now, Enheduanna is quite a lengthy heap of syllables to remember, so you might spot me pausing before I say it each time, because to remember which order they go in, I sing it in my head to the tune of I Am Moana. The worship of Inanna is old, really old. She was already a major deity back when recorded history began, back somewhere in the 4th millennium BC, and she has been worshipped right up until the 18th century. There are so many facts that I want to share with you, but this channel isn't called Facts I Have Learned, so let's skim a book. But I'm going to cheat because the originals of these are old stone tablets, so I have a load of the translations I found online printed out in a big folder somewhere, and I'm going to take you through some of my favourite bits of them. I'm going to spend this short series of videos just looking at myths about Inanna for two reasons. First, she's really cool. Secondly, Enheduanna wrote a hymn called Inanna Ebih, which I think is a really good gateway into Sumerian mythology, if none of you know anything about it already, and then we'll just follow the chain from there. It's about the mountain of Ebih not bowing to the goddess, and so she takes her revenge. Let's take a look. It begins. Goddess of the fearsome divine powers, clad in terror, riding on the great divine powers, Inanna, made complete by the strength of the holy Ankar weapon, drenched in blood, rushing around in great battles, with shields resting on the ground, covered in storm and flood. Great Lady Inanna, knowing well how to plan conflicts, you destroy mighty lands with arrow and strength and overpower lands. It goes on in this vein for some time, but I don't quite have the gravitas to pull it off. I suppose I'll just throw some kind of mystical sounding droning instrument underneath it. There we go. After listing her tremendous powers for some time, Inanna announces that while she was out walking, I approached the mountain range of Ebih, and it showed me no respect. Since they showed me no respect, since they did not put their noses in the ground for me, since they did not rub their lips in the dust for me, I shall personally fill the soaring mountain range with my terror. Against its magnificent size I shall place magnificent battering rams. Against its small size I shall place small battering rams. I shall storm it and start the game of holy Inanna. At the mountain range I shall start battles and prepare conflicts. I shall set fire to its thick forests. I shall take an axe to its evil doing. I shall make Gibel the purifier bare his holy teeth at its watercourses. I shall spread terror through the inaccessible mountain range Aratta. Like a city which An has cursed, may it never be restored. Like a city at which Enlil has frowned, may it never again lift its neck up. That is An, the supreme god of the heavens in which the whole universe resides, and Enlil, who's kind of a dick. And so she dresses in her finest war gear and fancy jewels, and at dusk she came forth regally, and followed the path to the Gate of Wonder, where she prays to An. He appears to her, and she thanks him for how powerful he made her, and how great her weapons are. I just love how Enheduanna has put this hymn to Inanna together, but then realised there was a bit where Inanna would need to talk about how great this even bigger god is, but she manages to humble brag about how great she is anyway. Anyway, she repeats her story to An of how the mountain offended her, and what she plans to do to it, to which An, the king of the deities, calls her his little one, and essentially says, Inanna, don't do that, it's a mountain, this is a bad plan. And so, having been advised against this by her god and the wisest being in the universe, she does it anyway! The mistress in her rage and anger opened the arsenal and pushed on the lapis lazuli gate. She brought out magnificent battle and called up a great storm. Holy Inanna reached for the quiver. She raised a towering flood with evil silt. She stirred up an evil raging wind with hang on, what is a potsherd? Okay, it's an archaeological term for broken bits of pottery. Pot shards! I get it now. And you can really tell that this was translated by archaeologists, because that is not a word that gets used by anyone else. My lady confronted the mountain range. She advanced step by step. She sharpened both sides of her dagger. She grabbed Ebih's neck as if ripping up esparto grass. She pressed the dagger's teeth into its interior. She roared like thunder. The rocks forming the body of Ebih clattered down its flanks. From its sides and crevices, great serpents spat venom. She damaged its forests and cursed its trees. She killed its oak trees with drought. She poured fire on its flanks and made it smoke dense. The goddess established authority over the mountain. Holy Inanna did as she wished. But then, shock twist, she addresses the mountain Ebih. Mountain range. Because of your elevation, because of your height, because of your attractiveness, because of your beauty, because of your wearing a holy garment, because of your reaching up to heaven, because you did not put your nose to the ground, because you did not rub your lips in the dust, I have killed you and brought you low. And for the first time she's included the fact that it's not just the mountain's lack of deference she's attacking it, but also its ambition, beauty and snappy dress sense. She was jealous. Finally she gloats. As with an elephant, I have seized your tusks. I like how her basic measure of success is out-wrestling an elephant. As with a great wild bull, I have brought you to the ground by your thick horns. As with a bull, I have forced your great strength to the ground and pursued you savagely. I have made tears the norm in your eyes. I have placed laments in your heart. Birds of sorrow are building nests on these flanks. And she gloats little more before it ends. Inanna be praised, Nisaba be praised. Okay, just a handful of Inanna facts. You may know Inanna under her better-known Babylonian name of Ištar, a faith that was exported to Phoenicia as the goddess Astarte, whose husband was Baal, a named baddie in the Bible. Astarte was worshipped in Greece under the name of Aphrodite, who the Romans nicked and called Venus. Her myth evolved in other directions too. Astarte's equivalent in Carthage was the goddess Tanit, who was either worshipped by the mass sacrifice of infants, or she just watched over their burial ground. The Romans say the Carthaginians were baby-sacrificing savages, but the Romans weren't the biggest fans of Carthage, so let's take that with a pinch of salt. Anyway, Tanit's face appeared on all the currency of the city, so the coins gained the nickname of being faces, and the Carthaginian for face is pane, a word that after a little bit of travel ended up as the name of a Saxon coin still in use today, the penny. Or maybe not, penny might be from panning, the West Germanic word for frying pan. Anyway, enough about coins. The faith of Inanna may also have evolved into the worship of Al-Uzza, one of the three chief goddesses of the pre-Islamic Arabian pantheon, known at the time as a daughter of Allah. She gets name-dropped in the Quran as one of the three other deities worth worshipping, leading to the theological mess that is the satanic verses, which is interesting and thoroughly worth you looking into, but I'm not touching it with a barge pole. However, there is an 8th century Islamic history text that details the old Arabic pantheon called the Book of Idols, and it's outside the scope of these Bronze Age things I'm talking about today, but it'll stop me banging on about coins, and that's something. It has a story about the Prophet sending his buddy and absolute unit, Khalid ibn al-Walid, to kill the goddess Al-Uzza. After some debacle with going to the wrong tree a few times, like he's in a children's book, he finds the priest is a man called Dubaya. Presumably no relation to former President George Dubaya. And when Khalid arrived on the scene, he found an Abyssinian woman with dishevelled hair and her hands placed on her shoulders, gnashing and grating her teeth. Behind her stood Dubaya al-Sulami, who was then the custodian of Al-Uzza. When Dubaya saw Khalid approaching, he said, "O thou Al-Uzza, remove thy veil and tuck up thy sleeves. Summon up thy strength and deal Khalid an unmistakable blow, for unless thou killest him this very day, thou shalt be doomed to ignominy and shame." Thereupon Khalid replied, "O Al-Uzza, may thou be blasphemed, not exalted. Verily I see that God hath abased thee." Turning to the woman, he dealt a blow which severed her head in twain, and lo, she crumbled into ashes. He then cut down the tree and killed Dubaya the custodian, after which he returned to the Prophet and reported to him his exploit. Thereupon the Prophet said, "That was Al-Uzza, but she is no more. The Arabs shall have none after her. Verily she shall never be worshipped again." And I find that story oddly sad. Normally when a god dies in a myth, it's like a death in a Marvel film. You know Loki will be back in the next installment of Thor, but when Thanos says, "No resurrections this time," it hits you hard. Let's cheer up with another Inanna story. So back in Inanna and Ebih, she's referred to as a maiden. This seems to be from before she got her god of sex mantle and was all about justice and war. We'll skip the story of how she got that and spin on to when her twin brother Utu starts to hint that she should get married. There are a few versions of this story. The one I'll be looking at is called The Courtship of Inanna and Dumuzi. There's a shorter one that has a much better title, Inanna Prefers the Farmer, I say a much better title because Inanna Prefers the Farmer sounds like the name of a raunchy 70s carry-on style smutfest, and that's exactly how the story reads. So at the beginning, Utu strikes up a seemingly innocent conversation with Inanna about the flax harvest, prompting Inanna to ask what she should do with it. He tells her he'll take care of it. She asks what to do with it after that, and progressively Utu reassures her that don't worry, he'll do all the work, he'll comb it and spin it and braid it and weave it and bleach it. Until Inanna realises his angle. He's describing making bridal bed linen. She asks who will go to bed with me, and the two discuss which of her two suitors she should marry. It's either the farmer that Inanna prefers, hence the title of the other one, see there? He brings plenty of grain into her storehouses, or Dumuzi, the shepherd that Utu suggests. Utu talks him up with such subtle hints as, Dumuzi will share his rich cream with you. Inanna smack talks how poor Dumuzi is, but then suddenly Dumuzi pipes up and talks about how great he is, which is a surprise, because Dumuzi has not thus far been involved in the scene. It seems like Utu must have smuggled him in at some point as a part of his master plan, or maybe they were just discussing all of this really loudly and he couldn't help overhear. Either way, sloppy writing, and Hedjuana wouldn't have made that kind of cock-up. Dumuzi and Inanna bicker until the word they had spoken was a word of desire. From the starting of the quarrel came the lover's desire. Honestly, rhyming desire with desire. You can understand why these ancient poets didn't tend to put their names on these. Dumuzi turns up at the royal palace, bringing his cream, and we get the shock twist that Inanna still lives with her mum. I mean, she's unmarried, and it was the olden times when that was the normal way of things, but still, she blows up mountains. You think she could at least rent somewhere down the road. So Inanna gets her mum's permission and gets dressed up fancy, and they let him in and they kiss. And then Inanna launches into a poem that continually repeats the conundrum, who will plough my vulva? Which raises two questions. First, is her mum still there? Second, all this talk of ploughing is kind of tactless. She did pass over a farmer to be with this guy. Why not just say she's thinking of the other guy? After Dumuzi volunteers to be her ploughman, Inanna says, Then plough my vulva, man of my heart, plough my vulva. At the king's lap stood the rising cedar. Plants grew high by their side, grains grew high by their side, gardens flourished luxuriantly. Yep, this is a poem about how verdant this Sumerian god's pubic bush is. Your move, Christianity. They discuss banging at length. There's a whole lot of symbolism about drinking each other's fluids and spattering each other with seed. It is not subtle. Then they bang at length, and you realise the bit before was subtle in comparison. They chat for a bit about how this will make Dumuzi an amazing king, which is kind of dull, but there are two theories about how this fits into how Inanna was worshipped. One is that every year someone would ceremonially marry her. Acting as Dumuzi, they'd live in the temple as a god for a year, and then get sacrificed so her tears might fall as rain on the crops. And another theory that Dumuzi was a real person who became king and commissioned this myth to give his rule some artificial divine authority. And suddenly this all gets pretty grubby. Previously it was just a joyous sex romp, but knowing this is some guy's skeezy self-insert fanfiction where he gets to stick it to the most powerful lady in town in order to make himself feel big, for a modern example of this practice, just Google image search for Bowsette. Finally, just to keep the poem interesting, he goes to Inanna's loins with lifted head, and after tongue-playing her 50 times, she is sated and says nice things about him. Well, you would, wouldn't you? Moving on 1,000 years or so, the Babylonians worshipped Inanna and Dumuzi under the names Ištar and Tammuz. The cult of Tammuz and Ištar still existed in the city of Mardin in Turkey in the 18th century. For an account of this very late worship of these ancient gods, we turn to the Golden Bough, a much debunked anthropological text of the 1920s. The character of Tammuz, or Adonis, as a corn spirit comes... Corn. It always comes back to corn, doesn't it? Even the stories written 5,000 years before their ancestors would see corn for the first time. It's always bloody corn sacrifice. Anyway, the character of Tammuz or Adonis as a corn spirit comes out plainly in an account of his festival, given by an Arabic writer of the 10th century. In describing the rites and sacrifices observed at the different seasons of the year by the heathen Syrians of Haran, he says, Tammuz, July, in the middle of this month is the festival of El-Bugat, that is, of the weeping women, and this is the Tammuz festival, which is celebrated in honour of the god Tammuz. The women bewail him because his lord slew him so cruelly, ground his bones in a mill and then scattered them to the wind. The women, during their festival, eat nothing which has been ground in a mill, but limit their diet to steeped wheat, sweet vetches, dates, raisins, and the like. Tauz, who is none other than Tammuz, is here like Burns' John Barleycorn. John Barleycorn. John bloody Barleycorn! Remember him from chapbooks of the 18th century? This was genuinely a coincidence. I did not know his name would be here when I looked this up in the index. Spooky! Alright, back to the Bronze Age. There will be a future video about the Golden Bough. Time enough for one more story, I think. But I'm going to cheat and make it 2 stories. There are 2 very similar myths where both Ishtar and Inanna go into the underworld, where they both have the snot kicked out of them by her big sister, queen of the underworld, known as Erec-Ki-Gala in Inanna's myth, and Erec-Ki-Gala in Ishtar's. The Ishtar version is concise and to the point. The Inanna version is a glorious mess, so naturally that's one we'll be looking at, but I'll embellish it with some of the choice bits from the Ishtar myth as we go. It begins when, from the great heaven Inanna set her mind on the great below, my mistress abandoned heaven, abandoned earth, and descended to the underworld, and goes on to list all the many titles she leaves behind. Then she goes through her powering up montage. She collected the 7 divine powers and grasped them in her hand. With the good divine powers she went on her way. She put a turban, headgear for the open country, on her head. She took a wig for her forehead. She hung small lapis lazuli beads around her neck. She placed twin, egg-shaped beads on her breast. She covered her body with a parlour dress, the garment of ladyship. She placed mascara, which is called Let a Man Come, Let Him Come, on her eyes. She pulled the pectoral, which is called Come Man Come, over her breast. She placed a golden ring in her hand. She held the lapis lazuli measuring rod and measuring line in her hand. How concerned should I be that when the goddess of sex is walking around with her 7 divine items of power, 2 of them are for measuring things? I'm asking for a friend. Moving on, Inanna travels towards the underworld. Her minister Ninkubura travels behind her. Holy Inanna said to Ninkubura, "On this day I will descend to the underworld. When I have arrived in the underworld, make a lament for me on the ruin mounds, beat the drum for me in the sanctuary, make the rounds of the houses of the gods for me. Lacerate your eyes for me, lacerate your nose for me, lacerate your ears for me in public. In private, lacerate your buttocks for me. Like a pauper, clothe yourself in a single garment, and all alone set your foot in the Ištar, the house of Enlil. When you have entered the Ištar, the house of Enlil, lament before Enlil, Father Enlil, don't let anyone kill your daughter in the underworld. Don't let your precious metal be alloyed with the dirt of the underworld. Don't let your precious lapis lazuli be split there with a mason's stone. Don't let your boxwood be chopped up there with the carpenter's wood. Don't let the young lady Inanna be killed in the underworld." It's a really nice series of metaphors that they massively undermine just by stating the subtext at the end. Come on guys, have some faith in your audience. But Ninkubura is told if Enlil refuses, and spoilers, he will, because being a massive dick is kind of Enlil's thing, she should go to Nana, Inanna's mother. If Nana won't help, she's told to go to Enki, which makes absolute sense because the 2 of them go way back. There's another story where Enki and Inanna drink a load of beer until Enki drunkenly thinks it would be a hoot to give Inanna all his divine power, so she runs off with it. It's a good myth. Inanna spends the first few paragraphs shouting at nobody in particular about how remarkable her genitals are, but that's another story. As Inanna descends into the underworld, this is the part where the story of Ishtar in the underworld begins, and it has a much stronger walking into the underworld bit. I'll change the names to match the Inanna myth. To the Netherworld, land of no return, Inanna, daughter of Nana, set her mind. The daughter of Nana set her mind to the gloomy house, the seat of the Netherworld, to the house that none leaves who enters, to the road whose journey has no return, to the house whose entrants are bereft of light, where dust is their sustenance and clay their food. They see no light and dwell in darkness. They are clothed like birds, in wings for garments. The dust has gathered on the door and the bolt. When Inanna reached the gate of the Netherworld, she said these words to the gatekeeper, "O gatekeeper, open your gate for me. Open your gate that I may enter. If you do not open the gate that I may enter, I will break down the door, I will smash the bolt. I will break down the frame, I will topple the doors. I will tear off the knob. I will raise up the dead so that they devour the living, and the dead will outnumber the living." The gatekeeper made ready to speak, saying to Inanna the Great, "Stay, my lady, do not knock it down." And here we'll cut back to the Sumerian version, where Nettie, the gatekeeper, asks why she's there, and she reveals that it is to mourn the passing of good Gal Anna, the husband of her sister Erec-Ki-Gala, the queen of the underworld. Some background: good Gal Anna, also known as the Canal Inspector of Heaven, might also be the same character as the Great Bull of Heaven, whose death in the Epic of Gilgamesh was entirely Ishtar's fault, so her being here for his funeral is pretty rich, but none of her many god roles are to be the god of tact. Anyway, Nettie, the gatekeeper, goes to Erec-Ki-Gala and tells her how Inanna is being kind of rowdy at the door, and how she's come in all her best godly finery and is ready and able to kick some ass. And Erec-Ki-Gala goes full panto villain. Erec-Ki-Gala slapped the side of her thigh. She bit her lip and took the words to heart. She said to Nettie, her chief doorman, "Come, Nettie, my chief doorman of the underworld, don't neglect the instructions I will give you. Let the 7 gates of the underworld be bolted, then let each door of the palace be opened separately. As for her, after she has entered and crouched down and had her clothes removed, they will be carried away." I just feel really bad for Nettie's self-esteem, because all the other gods in this, they don't have to be explained every time they're mentioned, but he gets referred to as the chief doorman every time his name comes up. He's like your friend Steve, who you're pretty sure everyone's forgotten, so you have to give them context every time you mention them. Anyhow, Nettie, the chief doorman of the underworld, paid attention to the instructions of his mistress. He bolted the 7 gates for the underworld, then he opened each of the doors of the palace separately. He said to holy Inanna, "Come on, Inanna, and enter." And when Inanna entered, the turban, headgear for the open country, was removed from her head. What is this? Be satisfied, Inanna, a divine power of the underworld has been fulfilled. Inanna, you must not open your mouth against the rights of the underworld. And so she passes through each of the 7 gates, losing a part of her divine regalia at each step. After she had crouched down and had her clothes removed, they were carried away. Then she made her sister Erec-Ki-Gala rise from her throne, but instead she sat on her throne. The Inanna, the 7 judges, rendered their decision against her. They looked at her, it was the look of death. They spoke to her, it was the speech of anger. They shouted at her, it was the shout of heavy guilt. The afflicted woman was turned into a corpse, and the corpse was hung on a hook. I love how powerful and ominous that is compared to the Ištar version, which reads like Erec-Ki-Gala is cackling her scheme like the baddie from the Power Rangers. "Come, Namtar, let loose 60 diseases against Ishtar the Great, eye diseases against her eyes, arm diseases against her arms, foot diseases against her feet, heart diseases against her heart, head diseases against her head. Let loose diseases against all of her." And then, in the Inanna version, 3 days pass without event. In the Ishtar version, though, everyone in the world above stops fucking. The bull would not mount the cow, the ass would not impregnate the jenny, the young man would not impregnate the girl in the thoroughfare, the young man slept in his bedroom, the girl slept by herself. I like how getting impregnated in the thoroughfare was apparently the most normal and unremarkable means of reproduction back in Babylon. Every time you hear London referred to as the modern Babylon, I assume that getting knocked up in an alleyway is what they're talking about, so long as they consider Croydon to be a part of London. So, 3 days pass, and Yinki does as Inanna commanded. She goes around banging a drum, dresses like a pauper, cuts open her eyes and arse, and goes to see the gods. Enlil turns her away, saying, "The divine powers of the underworld are divine powers which should not be craved, for whoever gets them must remain in the underworld. Who, having got to that place, could then expect to come up again?" Nana says the same, so Ninkibura goes to Father Enki, who says, "What has Inanna done? She has me worried, she has me worried. What has the Hierodule of Arn done? She has me worried." I looked up what a Hierodule is. It's either a kind of Tyranid Biotitan armed with 2 biocannons, strength 10 AP3, or it's a kind of temple prostitute. Either way, solid description. So, Enki removed some dirt from the tip of his fingernail and created the Kurjara. He removed some dirt from the tip of his other fingernail and created the Galatura. To the Kurjara he gave the life-giving plants, to the Galatura he gave the life-giving water. Now these two are interesting. These two are the origins of the Gala, Inanna's priesthood, who, depending on your interpretation, were either all genderless, trans, or third gender, and the use of their anus was devoted solely to the worship of their goddess. And of course there's the fact that their name is a smutty pun, because the written symbols that make up Gala literally translate as penis-anus, whereas when spoken out loud, Gala is the Sumerian word for vulva. It's just occurred to me that my fiance's parents watch this show. Hi guys, moving on. Then Father Enki spoke out to the Galatura and Kurjara. "Go and direct your steps to the underworld, flit past the door like flies, slip through the door pivots like phantoms. The mother who gave birth, Erec-Ki-Gala, on account of her children is lying there. Her holy shoulders are not covered by a linen cloth, her breasts are not full like a Kagan vessel, her nails are like a pickaxe upon her. The hair on her head is bunched up as if it were leeks. When she says, 'Oh, my heart,' you are to say, 'You are troubled, our mistress, oh, your heart.' When she says, 'Oh, my liver,' you are to say, 'You are troubled, our mistress, oh, your liver.' She will then ask, Who are you? Speaking to you from my heart to your heart, from my liver to your liver. If you are gods, let me talk with you. If you are mortals, may a destiny be decreed for you. Make her swear this by heaven and earth. They will offer you a river full of water, don't accept it. They will offer you a field with its grain, don't accept it. But say to her, give us the corpse hanging on the hook. She will answer, that is the corpse of your queen. Say to her, whether that is of our king, whether that is of our queen, give it to us. She will give you the corpse hanging on the hook. One of you sprinkle on it the life-giving plant, and the other the life-giving water. Thus let Inanna arise. And then, like a heist movie, where they plan the job over a montage of them performing the heist, these two spirits pull it off flawlessly. The Ištar version is similar, but instead Enki's Babylonian equivalent Ea creates the eunuch Asu-Spu-Imar, who instead of empathizing with Erec-Ki-Gala's labour pains, tricks her into promising them water when it's forbidden in the underworld. So in return she lets Ištar go, but says, go, Asu-Spu-Imar, I curse thee with a great curse. The sweepings of the gutters of the city be thy food, the drains of the city be thy drink, the shadow of the wall be thy abode, the thresholds be thy dwelling place, drunkard and sot strike thy cheek. Then Ištar leaves the underworld, and everything is fine, the end. The Inanna version still has loose ends to tidy up, though. And thus Inanna arose. But as Inanna was about to ascend from the underworld judges, the Ununa, seized her, saying, if Inanna is to ascend from the underworld, let her provide a substitute for herself. I like how the gods are messing around with underworld politics, while the underworld civil servants just get the job done. So she departs the underworld with a gang of 7 demons looking to drag someone back to take her place. Those who accompanied Inanna know no food, know no drink, eat no flower offering, and drink no libation. They accept no pleasant gifts, they never enjoy the pleasures of the marital embrace, they never have any sweet children to kiss, they tear away the wife from a man's embrace, they snatch the son from a man's knee, they make the bride leave the house of her father-in-law, they crush no bitter garlic, they eat no fish, they eat no leeks. They it was who accompanied Inanna. Now these demons, these counterpoints to Inanna, whose whole thing is to not have sex and prevent people from having sex and families, why would you devote one of your precious lines of description when you're running short on tablet space to specify they don't eat leeks? Knowing my Inanna myths, I have a suspicion that crushing garlic and eating fish and leeks is probably some kind of innuendo too smutty to translate properly. I'll leave that to your imagination. Inanna leads her procession of demons from town to town, and in each place her people fling themselves in the dust at her feet and beg for mercy, which is smart, because we saw what happened to the mountain range that didn't do that. All of them have been mourning her, and she begrudgingly says she values each of her followers too much for any of them to take her place in the underworld. There's Ninkubura, who saved her, then Kara, her manicurist, and then outstanding Lulal, who's some guy that just follows her around, but presumably in a helpful way. And then they followed her to the great apple tree in the plain of Kulaba. There was Dumuzi, clothed in a magnificent garment and seated magnificently on a throne. The demons seized him there by his thighs. The 7 of them poured the milk from his churns. The 7 of them shook their heads. It's good to know that mobsters doing a shakedown have never changed. She looked at him. It was the look of death. She spoke to him. It was the speech of anger. She shouted at him. It was the shout of heavy guilt. How much longer? Take him away. Holy Inanna gave Dumuzi the shepherd into their hands. Dumuzi let out a wail and turned very pale. The lad raised his hands to heaven, to Utu. Utu, you are my brother-in-law. I am your relation by marriage. I brought butter to your mother's house. Turn my hands into snakes' hands, and turn my feet into snakes' feet, so I can escape from my demons, let them not keep hold of me. Utu accepted his tears. Utu turned Dumuzi's hands into snakes' hands, he turned his feet into snakes' feet. Dumuzi escaped his demons. There are some lines missing here, which is utterly infuriating, because this is the climax of the story, the crux of the whole thing. Thankfully, it's preserved in vastly extended form in another couple of stories, called Dumuzi's Dream and The Return of Dumuzi, which I won't delve into here, but the titles show how the Sumerians put some serious effort into marketing the franchise. In short, he escapes, gets caught, escapes, gets caught, escapes, gets caught, and dies. Then Inanna mourns for her lost husband, which, again, is kind of rich, seeing as this is all her fault. She is the god of many things, but learning from her mistakes is not one of them. Holy Inanna wept bitterly for her husband. She tore at her hair like esparto grass. She ripped it out like esparto grass. You wives who lie in your men's embrace, where is my precious husband? You children who lie in your men's embrace, where is my precious child? Where is my man? Where is my man? A fly spoke to Holy Inanna. If I show you where your man is, what will be my reward? Holy Inanna answered the fly, If you show me where my man is, I will give you this gift. The fly helped holy Inanna. The young lady Inanna decreed the destiny of the fly. In the beer house and the tavern, there you will live, like the sons of the wise. Now Inanna decreed this fate, and thus it came to be. Wait, so this whole thing, this underworld epic cycle of clashing gods and death and rebirth, was all just one big just so story about why there are flies in pubs? Oh, hang on, there's one more incomplete paragraph. Let's read around it. So here Inanna has followed the fly's instructions and found her husband. Inanna was weeping. She came up to Dumuzi's sister and took her by the hand and said to Dumuzi, "Now, alas, you for half the year and your sister for half the year, when you are demanded, on that day you will stay. When your sister is demanded, on that day you will be released." Thus holy Inanna gave Dumuzi as a substitute. Holy Erec-Ki-Gala, sweet is your praise. Ah, so this is all a Persephone in the underworld kind of deal. You know, Persephone gets abducted by Hades, food stops growing so Zeus sends Hermes to get her out, but she's eaten some pomegranate seeds and is forced to stay half the year. Inanna's version is similar. The goddess gets tricked into staying in the underworld through hidden cosmic rules, but the fertility that vanishes while she's gone is far smuttier. And instead of accepting a shitty seasonal rota system, she gets bailed out by her best gal pal and throws her ungrateful husband under the afterlife bus in her place. It's such a shame that these were lost to history for so long and we ended up building modern civilization on the Roman and Greek models. That said, I can understand why the man-pandering Abrahamic religions decided to forget this one over time but clung to the inoffensive wishy-washy Greek helpless lady narrative instead of this Bechdel test passing heavy metal legend of Inanna. And that seems like a good note to end it on. See you next time. Thank you for putting up with my extended nerding. I promise normal service will resume soon and I'll get back to doing a book video next. Hopefully something with pictures, because these are not interesting. I mean they're brilliant. Like and subscribe. Pictures.